Hello, hello, hello. Can everybody hear me? Hello, hello, hello. Can everybody hear me? I'm just checking chat. Hi, this is my first time going live. So I'm sorry if I'm not used to this. Hello, can you hear me? I'm completely new. Okay, great. Well, good evening, Europe. Good morning, California. I guess it's noon Eastern time. It's the crack of dawn in Australia. And it's midnight in Asia. So thank you for tuning in. I'll wait until some of you start joining. But if you can please say hello, tell me where you're from. I'm very excited to start this first live. If there are any technical difficulties, please forgive me. This is the first live and the first start of the Watts series, and I will explain to you a little bit about what is the start of this journey. But I'd love to get to know you. Hello, Ashley. Hello, Kawi. Hello, Pravit. Hello, Angelina, Leticia, Lena. Thank you for tuning in. Hello, Alex. Great from Bangkok. This is going to be a great program. And from London, we have from London, from Bangkok, and also from the US. Well, I'm in Paris, so this is a very international crowd. Well, let me tell you a little bit about the series. Many of you, like me, have probably been interested in the case for a long time. You're probably wondering, how can such a heinous and atrocious crime happen to a beautiful and seemingly perfect American family with the most gorgeous children? For me, I fell in love with Bella, Shannan, and Celeste. Obviously, I didn't have the privilege to know them, but with what I saw, Shannan was a strong, beautiful, and ambitious woman. She was a go-getter. She loved, and she loved hard. She was a fighter, fiercely determined to succeed in any goals she had. She adored her husband and her daughters. In that strength, she was also open and vulnerable about her weaknesses, her struggles, and her perfection. It was that openness, that rawness, which takes tremendous courage, that inspires many people to want to be close to her. Bella and Celeste were adorable, energetic, and just cutest bundle of joy and firecracker that you can't help but smile and tear up at their video. With the awaiting of no, this would have been the happiest time of the family. With that said, I just ask that you keep Shannan, Bella, Celeste, and Nico in your thoughts before we begin this journey. This series is not tolerant of victim blaming or disrespect of the victims. So if this is your view, this platform may not be right for you. Feel free to share in chat why this case has captivated you, or why you're here, why somehow you might not be able to let go of this case. Some may not be able to grasp that Chris Watts can be capable of the most atrocious act of brutality to dispose the remains of his wife in such a position with utter disregard, and to shove his beloved children in such a cold, inhumane way through 8 inches latch of oil battery tanks. The judge described this as the most inhumane crime in the thousands of cases he has ever seen. You may think that there's more to this story, that Chris must have had help because such a people pleaser who seemed to be a beta male follower under the spell of his mistress cannot have acted alone. Or you may think he's an evil psychopath, narcissist monster who has been able to hide his mask all along. In fact, life imprisonment may just be too good for him. You may wonder why the Watts series. After all, this is a closed case. Chris pled guilty. Christopher Watts never had a trial, which left many questions unanswered as to the tragic events and what happened that night. The Watts series is a journey with you to address and hope to answer some of these questions. It's meant to be a fact-based and objective, limited series on various aspects of this case based on the discovery, Weld County files, court document, public records, and information with commentary by different professionals and experts to unravel the case. The reality is, we may never fully know what happened on the tragic night of 13 August 2018. But I hope that by teaming up with experts and with you joining this journey, we will uncover some questions, such as the time of death and how some of these events happened. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome you to our first guest.
Hello.
Hi. So we have the privilege with us to have a seasoned prosecutor who has almost 10 years of experience in various positions at the district attorney's office. I have known her for a very long time, and she graduated from one of the top law schools in the US, and she's extremely experienced, intelligent, talented, gifted. And I'm very grateful that she has agreed to join and be the first guest of the part of the Watts series to give her opinion and input from a prosecutor's point of view. And I hope that this will be helpful because we've never heard from a prosecutor to comment on various aspects of the legal proceedings and the investigation. But I want to first put the disclaimer that our guest is not a Colorado attorney, and she is not involved in this case. She has not fully read into the files, although she is somewhat familiar. And she is not giving Chris Watts any legal advice. Do you have anything to add, Christina?
No, I mean, that about covers it. So I have been a prosecutor for almost 10 years. I'm licensed in a couple of different states, but I am not licensed in Colorado. I have no affiliation to any of the agencies that were involved in this investigation. And I do not hold myself out as an expert in any way, but I do believe that I do have some experience so that I can offer a more, I guess, like educated opinion. But I mean, most of these are just my theories and not really based in anything that I know for sure, just kind of an educated guess.
Thank you, Christina. So I think the outline of today is we're going to go through from the start of the investigation to get Christina's point of view on from a prosecutor's perspective, and also some of the legal process that happened in this case to dispel some of the rumors and also answer some questions from social media that I have seen, and also some that were asked to me. And although I'm an attorney, I'm certainly not a criminal attorney. I have interned at the DA's office for 4 months but that was probably about 2003. So I have only a little bit of insight, but I am not Christina. So this is certainly more for Christina's viewpoint and perspective and expertise. So I think what we're going to do, Christina, is maybe start with the very, very beginning. And I show you the footage of the body cam. And then you can see from, if you were working on this case, what would be your reaction and perspective in terms of an investigation happens or a phone wellness check is called, and what would be your observation? And let's remind everybody that this is a very small county where there's probably never been a murder before, and at the time law enforcement was called simply for a wellness check.
Right.
So let me add only the beginning of the body cam footage. And then we can watch it together and go through it.
Okay.
And with chat as well. So there's actually quite a long start from the beginning of the body cam. So we're going to move straight ahead to minute 17. So let me just put in the tab.
This is when Chris has already arrived at the location?
Yeah, so hold on. Let me find. Let me find the right tab. Hold on.
Okay.
I'm still learning technology, so please forgive me. Okay, so we're going to go to minute, I think.
17, I think you said.
Oh, hold on. I have to share sound as well. Let me start this again.
Okay.
Are people able to hear this?
I can hear you. I don't think the video's playing yet.
Can you hear the body cam?
I don't hear it.
Okay, hold on. Let me stop share. Okay. Apologies, everyone. You'll have to be patient with me as this is my first live. Yes, I forgot to share sound. So Chris Watts, first police contact, share. Let's see if this is working. Okay, Christina, are you able to hear this?
I don't hear anything playing yet. I see you toggling on the video. Has it started playing yet?
Yes, can you see it?
Yes, I can see it.
So Chris arrives around 2:07. I think the officers arrived, and somebody may correct me, at 1:48. Let me try to see if I can fix the volume.
Police department, if anyone's inside, make yourself known.
And just to refresh everyone's recollection, the police arrived after Shannan's friend Nico called the police
if anyone's inside, make yourself known.
Because she was worried that she hadn't been responding to calls and text messages and hadn't shown up for her doctor's appointment that morning, correct? So this was a welfare check.
Yeah, you'd think they were here. The kids or someone would respond, though. You'd hear some kind of noise. When did you talk to her last, Sandy? How are you doing?
Okay, now he's arriving.
Mhm.
So I'd like your take on his behavior and what you think in terms of from your experience.
Scott, how you doing? So this is the only vehicle she would have? She would drive?
And here he'll do a double take before he opens the car and retrieves something.
That's me. Yeah. The neighbors went and checked his camera and said that a white car drove away at 1. It was Nico. That was me. I dropped her off.
And then he goes in the house for quite a bit of time, like a little
Yeah, that's-
over a minute.
Yeah, it's like, what is he doing? What is he doing in the house? Why doesn't he have everyone just come in with him?
Immediately,
What about this? There's no way you can look for the day? During the daytime?
The girl's car seats are in the car too. So she left with a friend. She would have took
I mean, it was already very telling that it was her friend that called the police and not her own husband. You would think that you'd be worried if you're
well,
pregnant.
he
with-
actually told her not to call the police.
Right. I mean, that's already like, why? And the fact that he walked around to the front door to let him in that way instead of just having them follow him through the garage. That tells me that he's hiding
Yeah, it's up to
something.
him. It's his house. You guys,
Yeah, so it's about over a minute that he
Mind if I come in,
goes
Chris?
into the house. And then he gives a
Right.
consent to the police to enter.
Yeah, it's like, what are you doing?
Because the police, they're not allowed to enter his
He
house
checked upstairs?
without a
Not there.
consent.
I just want to make sure she's
Right.
not passed out somewhere.
They also don't have
Diabetic?
to search unless he consents. But the way he just keeps going from room to room,
You mind if I look around? Okay, thanks.
it's like what is he doing? Is he looking for them? What is he ostensibly holding himself out to be doing?
Oh, you're fine. Oh, you're fine.
Yeah, his behavior just from right off the bat is very strange. The way he just keeps going from room to room. He doesn't ever seem to be in the room that the officer is in. So I don't know what he's doing. I don't know if he's going through to make sure that
Yeah,
he didn't.
he's very evasive.
Right.
He's evasive of the officer.
Yeah, it's like he's hiding. He wants to be somewhere else, so they're not seeing what he's doing and how weird he's acting. That's all stuff that I would point out. For example, if this had gone to trial, I would point out all of this to a jury. Like this is not the behavior of a concerned husband, of someone that genuinely doesn't know where his wife and family are. This looks like suspicious behavior that's hiding something. Like, where is he right now? What is he doing? You would think he'd be with the officer trying to help them locate his family.
So you see that Minnie Mouse curtain right there is apparently where you can escape in and out without alerting the motion sensor.
Hmm.
Go for it. Check in the house for consent. Oh. Well. Any friends she would be hanging out with? I mean,
And nobody
So I guess
was
her-
yelling out for her name.
her
Okay.
parents are
Here's
state.
interesting.
across country, North Carolina. Oh.
That's not happening. See, so he's like, he's rejecting any possibility.
Hmm.
Okay.
And why are all the curtains drawn
Else appears to be missing out. Just
in the bedrooms?
stuff you take for a quick.
Yeah, that's very bizarre.
Like it's so dark in there. What is that about? It's daytime.
Does she work?
Yeah, so there they find her phone,
Hmm.
and he can't get into her phone.
Well, he just looks nervous. He's kind of pacing. I mean, he's kind of like, just fidgeting around.
Shut down?
Yeah. And there's no eye contact with the police officer.
Right, because
He's completely
a bad liar.
avoiding them.
Yeah.
He's like playing hide and seek with them.
Yeah, he just looks so, his body language is just so telling. Like the friend looks genuinely worried, concerned. He just looks scared.
Let me see this. Does this enlarge the screen on YouTube? Hold on. I'm trying to enlarge the screen. This is the best I can do.
What does she do for work? She works direct sales company called Drive.
He's not even turning to look at the officer.
I know, he never makes any kind of eye contact.
Her friend looks more worried.
Right. She looks a lot more worried than he does. He looks
How often does the blood
nervous.
sugar drop low? Actually, her friend in Arizona said that that's the first time that's ever happened.
She normally has migraines, like a while ago, but she had had them a lot this weekend. So Cass is a nurse, so she figured it was because of blood pressure sugar was dropping because she wasn't eating.
He looks kind of irritated with her.
She doesn't ever black out or have seizures or.
Yeah, he's really irritated with her.
Long time ago. She got in a car wreck, and I believe that's what happened. But Imitrex is something she takes for migraine. She took more Imitrex this last month than she ever had before, but that's just because she was in North Carolina with humidity and everything like that. She was there for 6 weeks, and we got back Monday or Tuesday, and then she flew out to Arizona Friday morning.
Again, looking away.
About 2 a.m. Like
Yeah, he's just.
She got here too. Okay. I went to work this morning about 5:15, 5:30. What do you do? I work at oil and gas. What do you do for them? Operate. Oh. Long days then? Yeah, I definitely still be out there. Yeah. It's always a long day, especially in that heat. There's no like text messages.
Can you look at your camera to see from your security system? See when she left?
That's what I left out the front door.
Because you told me that she went on a play date with the girls.
That's what she told me.
You said you told her that
she went to go to a friend's house with the kids. That's why they're going at school.
The friend is already kind of like almost cross-examining him. Like, you told me this, and he's like,
Yeah,
that's
the friend is questioning him.
Yeah. It's hard to, you can already see how he already couldn't keep his story straight.
And he's just like texting away.
I know, and who is he calling right now? And, I don't know why the officer doesn't ask him, like, who are you talking to?
But the officer seems to be just zoning in on him, and they're just videotaping him and observing him.
But they don't follow him from room to room, which that's what I would have been on him.
Yeah.
I mean, where are you going? What are you doing?
Yeah, they should have. They should have trailed him.
Because, I mean, in these kind of cases, it's almost always the husband. That's always the prime suspect.
Yes.
That also tells me how
Well,
I don't think that this happens very often in their jurisdiction, and they don't have that much experience, but I would have been on him from the start. I would have been trying to make him give me a timeline that I could use against him later. I would already start to try to be tying down his timeline. And I would be following him to see what is he doing from room to room. And why are all the curtains in the bedrooms closed in the middle of the day? And who is he talking to?
if anybody knows how I can make the volume better, please do let me know. I'm not sure how to do it. Well, he may be allegedly on the phone with you know who.
I don't know if he would be that stupid to be talking to her.
But he's but texting. He's probably texting with her.
I know, but I mean, like, that's just so reckless. It's like, oh my God, what if at any moment they ask to see your phone and then they see who you're texting?
Because he's texting for directions. Like what to do next. Okay, just watch what he's doing. He's like waiting for instructions.
Yeah, he's like a little boy waiting for his mommy to tell him what to do.
I agree with Sarah here, who's commenting that I don't think he was talking to anybody. He's just pretending. Acting like the invisible man.
Yeah, it's a way of avoiding eye contact with the officer and having to talk to the officer. He's like, here, I'll pretend I'm on the phone.
Yeah, look at him texting away. And then there was one point they were saying, oh, maybe she's at the pool. And he's like, nah.
Nights or days? What time do you leave the day?
What time I leave there?
No, here.
Usually between 5:30 and 6.
Was Shannan here then?
Yes.
Does she usually watch the kids, or do you have daycare watch them?
She usually watches the kids if they're not at school.
I don't know why the officer doesn't ask him, like, are you texting one of her friends to see if they know where she is, or who are you texting right now?
I think the officers are total rookies.
Yeah, he just doesn't ask obvious questions. I'd be like, who are you texting? Are you trying to text, her other contacts to see if she's with them? What are you doing right now?
Okay, so he just got instructions on what to do next. He's
issues, marital issues, or
oh, there we go.
you are? You guys filed yet or anything, or just talking?
No, we're gonna sell the house.
How's that going?
Yeah, that already been a red flag to me. I'd be like, oh, so you guys are not happily married.
Does your wife go to that swim pool often, or?
It just depends. I mean, on a hot day like this, I would say no.
I would be so irritated with him that he's not paying attention to me. And that he's on his phone.
It's really rude.
It's rude. I'd be like, hello, we're looking for your wife. Are you not concerned? What are you doing on your phone? What is so important on your phone? That just
I mean,
tells
how
me
do you
so.
think a jury would take this?
They would think he's an asshole. They would be like, oh my God, he's just like a terrible liar. He's avoiding eye contact. He keeps shifting his weight from foot to foot. He looks super nervous. He does anything to avoid having to talk to the officer or ask questions. It's all very evasive behavior. He's just buried in his phone.
He's not cooperating with law enforcement.
527.
No,
Yeah.
he's not.
Overhead garage door to
He's not.
open it, shut
He's not cooperating with law enforcement at all.
about that time.
Yeah, and he didn't want to give them any permission to enter the house until he got there, which is already a huge red flag.
Yes.
Due to the sense
He refused to let them in.
I know. I'm like, why? Why? Only that.
And
that
he
just,
told the friend not to call the
Okay.
police.
right. That's all guilty behavior. All things that could be used against him.
the basement door was left open at 526.
I'd be like, if you had no involvement in it, then you would have no problem with the police going in and trying to see if they're there. You'd be concerned with their welfare. Only, if you have something to hide, would you be like, no, don't go into my house, wait till I get there, because I need to make sure, you don't see what I don't want you to see. And it's like, oh my God, I would have just snapped at him. But like, who the hell are you texting? What are you doing?
Pull up the video of the 12th. See who's-
Okay. He's
That was you. Okay.
he just got some instructions on what to do next. In my opinion.
He's so useless. He can't do anything without somebody
Okay,
telling him
watch. It's like, okay, remember what I'm gonna do next. Yes, he does need to be told what to do.
He's such an idiot. I know that's he just walked in there and he's like, oh, and here's her ring. I mean, he's like a terrible actor. It's so pathetic.
And the way he holds it like afar with his finger.
He's
Yes,
just
BS
terrible.
detector, you're right. They do obtain his text messages. It's under seal. We'll go through the sealed documents as to what is under court seal that we will never get until unless there is a trial or another investigation. And we'll talk about that.
Does she do her work from a laptop, or is it just from the phone?
Okay, so this is just a flavor of
It's not a joint
kind of his initial behavior.
She controls all of it. Like, she doesn't let me do the finances because pretty horrible back.
He's gonna say like he doesn't know anything, and so I think this just gives a flavor. So let's stop this for now, so that we can look at some of the other strange behavior. I think we should just, in the interest of time, since we do have a lot to go through, I would say we go to the following day, because a lot of people have already seen how he reacted when they went to see the body cam at his house, at his neighbor's house, and he had a very reaction to that.
Yeah, he looks very like, oh crap, kind of reaction.
Or maybe we'll take a very quick look at that. Just so we cover all our bases.
All of his body language is very consistent with someone that has something to hide. Yeah, I mean, like, he just looks like, oh.
So here, he's also texting away.
Yeah, and I'd be like, what? I would want to know, what are you doing? Are you trying to pull up video? Are you trying to see?
And he's looking away. Oh, there we
Look at him!
go.
Look at him! Look at him! See? He looks like someone that just got caught red-handed doing something. That's all stuff I would point out at a trial.
Okay, so just to check, because there's a lot of controversy once you zoom in the camera and all kinds of things that you can see. Now, would a zoomed version of the CCTV would be admissible at trial? Or only the raw footage?
Well, usually, I mean, all you would have to say at a trial is, is this a true and accurate depiction of, what your camera recorded? So, yeah, usually you don't want to be enhancing it too much. I mean, that's something that could be objected to. It just depends. I mean, I don't see why enhancing it or zooming in would be a reason to object. So I think that would come in.
Any action would have happened, any cars or anything left your house, I would have
Like right in that area, this would.
oh, it'll pick up anything coming down the street this way.
You know where that trigger is?
Oh, yeah. Watch, I'll show you. There's nothing on here, we've already watched that one.
Okay. Well, I think that gives just a flavor. But it was very strange that he went through an entire inventory.
What do you mean an
Of
inventory?
what he was putting in the truck.
Oh, I know.
Oh, he was basically saying what he was putting in the truck and what he was doing, and
Yeah,
yes.
because he's trying
But
to
here's a question.
Yeah.
Here's a question I have for you, because there's a Zoom footage. I told you about the shadow, and then I also told you about if you zoom in the camera, there's questions about whether or not there's a female exiting, leaving at first, and then there's a male, because there's different colored shoes, and you can see, well, some see different figures, but some don't. So would that kind of enhancement be allowed?
You're not allowed to like alter the video in any way, because that just makes you're tampering with evidence. So I would say that the most likely version of that video to have been entered into evidence was like the full unedited version.
Yeah.
That's what was most likely going to be entered into evidence.
Yeah. Oh, someone wants to ask you a question.
Sure.
Leanne, feel free. But yes, I mean, the CCTV footage, and from what we receive at Weld, I think there's a 10-second lapse. So,
I mean, like, in order to get this into evidence at a trial, they would have had to call the neighbor, and they would have had to establish, I'm the neighbor, I live here, I have a camera set up, and it was recording, and to the best of my knowledge, it was working correctly, and I have not edited this in any way, and it's a true and accurate depiction of what was recorded by my camera. So that's how you would get it into evidence. Has the question been asked yet? I just see.
No. So we'll just keep going, and if we spot questions, and then we'll try to make sure that questions are asked and answered at the end, hopefully. But let's go straight to his porch interview, because I find this a very interesting one.
When he gave the interview to the news people?
Yes.
I mean, he's just so emotionless, you know? He's not crying.
Okay, here. What do you think of his interview so far? Because he doesn't start off with anything like naming his wife or anything. He's just saying like what the police are doing, what the scent dogs are doing.
His body language is really weird. The way he has his arms crossed, he seems very nervous and not very
Mm-hmm.
sad or worried. I don't know. That's just like
Mm-hmm.
that's what I get from his body language.
Mm-hmm. For me, I found it strange that he still we're kind of 2 minute, well, a minute something in, and he still hasn't named his wife and children. He still hasn't said the name Shannan, Bella, Celeste, and he just kind of described the situation instead as to, oh, scent dogs are here, hopefully it'll lead to something, and instead of I don't know where my wife, Shannan, Bella, Celeste, who's this age, are at the moment, kind of immediately throwing it out there, like, pleading immediately. And I'm really worried. And, he said he got home and there's nothing. Actually, well, when he got home, everything was there, except there was nobody there. And people are not things. Like, yeah, it's like he's completely dissociated. I mean, everything was there. Her phone, her purse, her shoes, everything was there. Her ring, her car seat, everything was there. But nobody was there. Nothing was there. And then there was her people didn't get back to her. I mean, her friends and family, like, there was such a dissociation. And like a lack of, it was just it's like he's completely detached.
Yeah. And he's just kind of he's a terrible liar.
Yeah.
You can see how uncomfortable he is with lying. That's why he avoids eye contact. That's why he provides unnecessary details.
Yeah. Yeah, he had to be asked for the name.
And he almost seems like irritated, like, yes, I know what my kids' names are. Because I think at that point he was already like, well, I already know that they're not coming back, and I want to pretend that I don't want to have to talk about that or deal with that. Yeah, I mean, he should have just never talked to anybody. He's just.
Yeah, it was very strange. Normally you kind of make a plea, like whoever has, if anybody has her, contact Frederick's department at this number. This is what she looks like. Here's her photo. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of normally what you see, a plea for the return of your spouse and children.
I think that he was trying to lay the groundwork for a story where she just up and left him. So I think he was trying to
Yeah,
like,
because he's like,
how would a husband who had just been left by his wife and family, how would they act? So, he's trying to like, well, how should I be acting to convey that? But
that he
he's
doesn't
just
know how to act. So
yeah, he's a terrible actor and he's a terrible liar. So he should just really not have talked to
there's
them.
no, he shouldn't have. And there's no kind of worry or concern. Like I'm really worried. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it looks like he's worried. He's nervous because he's hiding something, but not worried that something happened to them because he already knows what happened to them.
Okay, so I think the video is silent because we were just talking. I'm sorry, we stopped the video for a little bit. But yeah, so we just want to kind of go through from the very beginning. And so now there's been a lot of questions as to whether or not he was Mirandized.
Mhm.
So I just wanted to show that he was Mirandized and he was given the consent form of the document. So let's go through the polygraph consent form together. So he had an interview. Actually, this is quite interesting because I wanted to kind of go through the court documents with you. And he was actually trailed on Tuesday. So he was immediately, this is Tuesday, and he was a person of interest, I think pretty much immediately. And that probably wouldn't surprise you.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's pretty common. It's more likely than not that the husband did something rather than a complete stranger came in and abducted them.
Right.
The husband is always the first suspect.
So here we have on Tuesday, it's already treated as a missing person, possible homicide. Here, you'll see me highlighting in the first paragraph. So this is not in the 2,000-page discovery, but it's in the full Weld County file. So you can already see that it's being treated as a missing person, possible homicide investigation. So at the time, the way the crime scene was treated, in my opinion, was that they were already so suspicious that because at least from the interview that I was reviewing, all the footage, that they were saying, how could she have left? There is no surveillance showing any way she could have left. Her shoes are there. Everything is there.
Yeah.
So that's why.
Of her arriving, but no video of her ever leaving.
Exactly. And he does talk about the back not having a video, and that she could have gone out the back as well.
But why would she do that? But I mean, at some point, it would have shown her car leaving. You know, the Ring camera would have picked up the movement of her car leaving, so you would have seen that at some point because it starts recording with any kind of movement. So,
Well, what about somebody taking her out the back?
But why? I mean, that's so like, just somebody just randomly showed up at her house to kidnap her.
Well,
Like,
what about if somebody is working with?
you mean the mistress?
Yes, let's say.
But what are the?
Let's say she was sedated, and
how do you get out the back of the house? Don't you have to eventually come out the front? Isn't the back?
No, there's. Well, I mean, there's the.
Is there a hole in the fence where you can get out?
Well, there's the Minnie Mouse exit, and then there's also the I think through the back porch. Somebody may correct me. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I guess anything is possible, but I think that the most probable thing that happened is that her body was being transported in that video that we have from the neighbor that shows what I think is most likely Chris moving the bodies into his truck to go dispose of them. So like you have to be very careful about like,
well, here on this
speculation. You want to, as a prosecutor, you concentrate on what can you actually prove, and ultimately your burden at a trial, and a criminal trial, is going to be beyond a reasonable doubt. So you don't want to go down these crazy speculation theories, because that's not anything that can be backed up by any concrete evidence. You want to know, what can I actually prove? What is the evidence before me? I mean, what is the point of going down these could this have happened? Could that have happened? You don't want your jury to be thinking that way, because then that's going to create a bunch of reasonable doubt.
Mm-hmm.
You want to create a concrete story that makes sense, so that anything else kind of seems crazy and not reasonable. You don't want to lead them down that path. That's something that the defense would create. The defense would create this. Their job is to create reasonable doubt, so they start poking holes in the story to create confusion and doubt.
Mm-hmm. Right. And does anybody here know? So initially he was going to be followed to. It was believed that he was going to travel to Thornton, and then he was followed until he got home. But they had looked at a particular address that he was believed to be driving to, because during the interview, they had already looked into his phone. And I think they had already gotten suspicious of the mistress's address. So they were trying to follow him. At least that's what it appeared as. But they were treating this as already a possible homicide from the second day, at least. And so we're discussing the crime scene. The crime scene was treated as a possible homicide crime scene from kind of the very start, at least from the second day.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Here, someone asked, do you think a jury of 12 would all have agreed that he was loading bodies on the footage if he had not confessed?
Probably not, because I mean that's just a lot of speculation. I mean, you can't really see what's happening on the video, but your job is to kind of tell a story and come up with a story that makes the most sense, backed up by concrete evidence. So obviously we can't see for sure what is happening on that video. All we see are like shadows and feet moving. But and I mean, yeah, the fact that you have a confession, obviously that would totally be used against him at the trial. You wouldn't need to be making your case purely on the video. You have his confession. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so let's talk about the confession a little bit. Because there's questions about whether or not he's Mirandized. And I want to show first, the polygraph. So he was asked on Tuesday whether or not he would take a polygraph by FBI agent Coder. He had an interview Tuesday evening, and he was already caught in a number of lies and made a statement along the lines of, I would never do something of such evil act, along that line. But wait, your wife is only missing and you thought she was disappearing. So why would you go to the length of saying it's such an evil act? So that was
a lot of
something that
he makes a lot of admissions or a lot of things that can be used against him.
Yes, because that was something that that detective Coder wrote in his personal notes of the word, such evil act or act of evil nature, and then circled it in his note.
Yeah, that's already very telling.
Okay, someone is asking, could Chris wanted to be seen on the neighbors to prove he wasn't loading the family up in his work truck?
I don't know. I mean, that's all speculation. I don't know what Chris Watts was thinking.
I mean, he did check it 2 weeks before to see what the camera could see. So there's, there's, I guess, two schools of thoughts. There are some people who, at least from viewing the videos and seeing comments on the videos, that see, him carrying a sheet. And then there's some who believe that he's taken out the back, that the body of Shannan, because somehow you would see it. So there's really, I think there's really kind of different schools of thoughts as to how Shannan's body would have been taken out. But do you think this is crucial in terms of proving the case in trial? Because you have his GPS going from his house to where the bodies were buried.
No, I mean, like, the most important evidence that you would be using at his trial is his own confession.
Well, I would think not only that, and the fact that his GPS takes him directly from his house
to his work site.
To the site without, and his GPS, his work GPS tracks him exactly, and the bodies are found at his work site. So I think that is strong circumstantial evidence. And perhaps this may be the time that you describe the difference between direct and circumstantial evidence, because most cases are proved through circumstantial evidence, not necessarily direct evidence.
Right. And a lot of people think that they are given different weight, but they are not. I mean, like an example of direct evidence is an eyewitness describing something. That's direct evidence of something, whereas circumstantial evidence is like something that tends to prove that something happened. So, like, for example, at trials, I try to, like, you can have a witness that testified it was raining outside. That's direct evidence that it was raining. Circumstantial evidence would be somebody comes in from outside and they have an umbrella and it's wet. And they're like, they're shaking it off. So that's circumstantial evidence that it was raining outside. And some people think that they're not equal, but that's not correct. They're both equal in terms of the weight that they're given at a trial, and one is not better than the other.
Yes, I mean, not every case is going to be proved through direct DNA evidence linked, but majority of cases are proven through circumstantial evidence. And I think this case has pretty strong circumstantial evidence. I mean, some people argue that there's no evidence at all, and I have a different opinion on that. I think that the circumstantial evidence is quite strong.
Yeah, and we have
What do you
direct
think?
evidence of his own confession. I mean, I guess
Yes.
I don't know, what is the hesitation of taking him at his word and accepting his confession that he did it? Why are we treating it with such
Yes.
suspicion? Why do we want to get rid of the confession and pretend we don't have the confession and try to see if we can make the case without the confession? I see no basis.
Okay, we'll get through you're very popular. There's lots of questions. So we'll try to go through we'll try to go through in sequence, or we will try to skip. Okay. Now then maybe you can explain why not all the discovery is released to the public. In this case, okay, there's 1,960 pages released and about 200 pages redacted. And you can also request certain discovery information directly through FOIA request to the Weld County DA if you make a request, and you can get some interview footages and body cam, etc. But I mean, this is pretty standard practice that it's only the defense that has the full discovery, but not the public. And this is very normal. But can you please explain this? That because I've heard that the American judicial system is not transparent, or but this is normal.
The most likely reason that I can see is that there may still be a potential investigation or possible litigation, and those are reasons to withhold information under the Freedom of Information Act. I know that the agency that I work for gets those kind of public records requests, and that is a basis on which to not turn that over, because you could be potentially damaging an investigation. So
yes, but you also don't release all of the evidence to the public normally, right? I mean, it's not standard practice.
Yeah, not usually. I mean, they may do it just because it's such a high profile case and they want to make it they want to portray that everything is on the up and up, and they're not they're not hiding things. And it could also be that stuff that they disclosed was in response to a Freedom of Information Act by the media. I'm sure that several media outlets were asking them to release this information, and the only thing that they could withhold is anything that could potentially be used in an ongoing investigation. So you can't just withhold information. You have to have a reason to withhold it. So I'm assuming that for the things that were disclosed, it's because there was no reason to withhold it. And that's why it was disclosed.
But I mean, there are also kind of confidentiality, public interest reasons, protecting certain individuals' private information, to redact certain information. For example, I mean, well, there's medical records. That's a HIPAA violation to disclose. What other kinds of information might you want to protect or treat as confidential?
Maybe like people's addresses, personal identity information, anything that could potentially, you know, be a security issue.
Mm-hmm.
Things of that nature.
Yes, and actually, I'll show you some of the documents that were under seal. The Vivint alerts are under seal. There was an actual request for the Vivint is the home security. Sorry, my voice was shaking because I think I was kind of the table was shaking a bit. But let me know if you have problems hearing me because I appreciate the feedback. Hold on.
But definitely the defense would have gotten everything. I mean, you're not allowed to withhold anything from the defense because that is a major ethical violation.
Okay, so I'll give you an example of something that is under sealed. Okay, so the home security system, you have here an order sealing the application and affidavit for court order for production of records for a Vivint smart home. So what they have installed is a home security system that has a doorbell cam and also a motion sensor. I don't know if you remember when you watched the Netflix movie that there was a scene during Christmas where Chris dressed as Santa and Shannan went to get the phone in the garage, and then there was a sound of a motion sensor. So these kinds of records we do not have. And in my opinion, from the phone call logs and from the text messages, it seems that Chris did some manipulations with the Vivint system because there were various calls that he made to Vivint so that perhaps
like to turn off.
Shannan couldn't. Yeah, so that Shannan didn't get the alerts of all the times that he was going to see his mistress during the 5 weeks that she was in North Carolina. So, for example, his mistress went over on the 14th of July, and she said she entered through the front door. So that would have captured it. And then the next day, he called Vivint for 30 minutes. So here you will see that. So perhaps, huh?
To have them erase footage or erase.
I don't know. You tell me.
I don't know. I mean, like like it's kind of like.
So here, perhaps you can go through this and then give your opinion on.
You mean why is this sealed? My opinion.
Yes, why would be sealed? And because people are asking. Okay, there's lots of questions. We will try to get through as many. You're very popular, and well, this is good. You might have to come back, Christine.
Well, what I'm guessing is what I can come off with at the top of my head is like, obviously this is still a home that exists. Maybe they don't want to disclose what kind of security system is at that home because the home could be broken into. And if somebody knows how the security works, it could help them break into the home and do things to it. So.
And also, I would think that there could be information about how the murder happened and even, camera footage. I don't know if there's any kind of internal camera or anything, but that would be.
I mean, I think we would, if there was video footage of the actual murders taking place, we would have seen that already. I don't think that's. It's not.
Well, the autopsy photos are sealed, but here you see the inventory.
Out of respect for the victims,
exactly.
These are people.
I mean, here you see
that these were real people. These are real victims, and would you want your loved ones, autopsy photos to be out there.
Yeah,
for
but
every-
I mean, here in the discovery, you see the reports that that law enforcement or the district attorney sent a subpoena from Vivint and the various reports that they received. And these are under court seal.
Mhm.
And it could be because there's an open investigation. So I put in a link to the prison
Absolutely.
interview in the live description. And if you listen to the prison interview, Agent Tammy said something to Chris about there being a lot of movement in the basement and whether or not the mistress was there. And I think you and I discussed that. Okay, we're going a little bit off topic, but why would there be the purpose of the prison interview where although Chris pled guilty on the 19th of November, around the 18th or 19th of February 2019, the FBI, the CBI, and the Frederick police detective who were involved in this case flew to Dodge Correctional Facility and had an interview with Chris that was recorded by phone. The audio is not so great, but for one, he told what happened. Although, I mean, he as you called him a liar. I mean, we don't know which version is true, which version isn't true. There's some inconsistencies, but there were a lot of questions being asked about NK and whether or not about the relationship he had with NK and, whether or not she was even there in the basement. And there were comments about there being a lot of motions in the basement. So this, I would presume that they received from the Vivint report because we don't have it in the discovery. So what's your opinion on that? I think we discussed it.
I think it sounds like they are treating her as a potential accomplice, and but they don't have anything concrete. So they were hoping that he was going to give them information that could tie her to it, because they don't have any, real physical concrete evidence that she was an accomplice. So I'm guessing that they were just trying to see what could he share that would substantiate that. They're trying to collect evidence against Nicole Kessinger.
Her phone record is also sealed. They also issued a subpoena to Verizon.
Yeah, that tells me that she's still the subject of an ongoing investigation, and that's why it's sealed. Because I can't think of another reason for it to be sealed.
Yes, and also Chris's phone is sealed.
That's why they're asking. That's why they're asking him. They're trying to get him to talk about, was somebody else helping you? Was somebody else there? And seeing what would he give up?
Yes, and he wouldn't flip. So, I mean, the fact here we see that it's in the discovery. You can see that
they wouldn't be able to prove her involvement beyond a reasonable doubt without him telling on her. Basically, there's not enough other evidence proving that she was an accomplice, something that you would be able to go to a trial. Because you always have to remember that at a trial, you have to be able to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. You're not going to go to trial unless you feel you can prove that. It's not like more likely than not. Beyond a reasonable doubt is the highest burden of proof in all trials. That is the highest. And it's a very high burden of proof, obviously, because you don't want to take away someone's freedom unless, you have no reasonable doubt that they did it. So you have to always think of that. They're trying to, and it could take a while for them to build their case against her. And that's why they don't want to disclose everything. They don't want to, show their whole hand.
Right. Exactly. So I hope that this answers some questions, and then we can also see some of the other
Wait, I see a question here. Someone pleads guilty for a crime. Is it normal for an investigation to end? Yes. Yeah, because I mean, like, why keep it going? If you think, usually you're investigating something to figure out who did it. But if you have someone over here saying, I did it, and there's other evidence tying them to it, then yes, there's no reason for it to continue to go on, because investigations take time and resources, and from the law enforcement perspective, like, that is a closed case. So why are you still utilizing resources that could go toward other cases that are unsolved? They have
okay,
to.
so here there's a lot of questions about the crime scene. And so just to go through, so prior to Wednesday, there's been 3 crime scene searches, and there's various reports. If you request the files from Weld County and evidence collection, and on Wednesday, the CBI, in addition to the Fredericks police went, and then if you request a file from Weld County, you will see that. Then Wednesday, they went there from 5 a.m. and Tuesday night, they were there basically all evening with warrants. And even 5 a.m. Wednesday, they logged into the router to disconnect the router and to get all of the data activities. And then eventually the crime scene was released, and it was released by, it's a detective who processed the crime scene at 11:30 p.m. Wednesday after he confessed. So here's a question about the release of the crime scene. I think I just pinned it. Why would they close the crime scene so early when they could have had that evidence?
What
No crime
evidence?
scene
What
investigation.
evidence do you think that they didn't collect? And what is your definition of closing it early? I mean, it's all relative, right? How long should they keep things closed down as a crime scene? What evidence, for what purpose? What are they supposed to be collecting at that crime scene? You can't keep things locked down forever. That takes time. That takes resources, law enforcement resources, to keep a crime scene locked down, because you have to make sure that someone is there, keep standing guard to make sure someone doesn't come onto the crime scene. But that is man hours that could be used toward other law enforcement purposes.
And here it says, so thank you, CDT, for coming here. We really appreciate, and CDT is a great channel that I have been following for quite some time. So the question is, they've released the house as a crime scene before Chris said he did it all. So
I think they already had a strong suspicion that he did it all, and they were just, that just sealed the deal. That was just the cherry on top. His admission. I think they already had a lot of suspicion of him, and I don't see what would be the point of keeping it an active crime scene. Just I don't understand. You can't keep something as an active crime scene indefinitely. You go in, you collect the crucial pieces of evidence, you photo document everything.
no, he has confessed at the time they closed it. He confessed on Wednesday, late afternoon, early evening. And the crime scene was released that evening at 11:30 something p.m. Here, I'll show you the document. Good thing I've made a specific file for the prosecutor for all the documents relating to here. I reported back, search, collected, copy of the search warrant left. Okay, hold on. Let me find the. Neighborhood. Okay, sorry. Christina, maybe there's some questions you can answer in the meantime while I'm looking for the document.
Would they not need evidence to gather more than 2 days? No, I mean, how long does it take to collect evidence from a house? It's not a very big crime scene. It's a house. You know, I'm guessing that their attention, or that they were gathering stuff in the bedrooms, because that's where they had the sheets missing and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm assuming that they were looking for any kind of body fluids or blood. There's no way for them to, like, I guess you have to ask, what evidence are you expecting them to collect? Things like fingerprints, DNA, body fluid. What do we consider evidence? I'm sure that they went in and took pictures of everything. What do you make of the DA changing the crime scene for the girl's location of the murder? I'm guessing that that's because he said that he killed them at the site. And
Hi, sorry, I accidentally exited myself.
his story changed many times, but I know that at least at one point in time, he did say that he killed the girls at the site. After, like, he already killed Shannan at the house, and that he put her body in the truck and then transported the body and himself and the girls, who were still alive at that point, to the site, and then smothered them there. So I'm guessing that that's why. I mean, but basically, I'll never know what the DA is thinking. I can't speak for the DA because I'm not the DA. So I can just make educated guesses about why he did certain things. So I'm
Yes.
guessing that's why he did it. I don't know. I can't say for sure. It's all speculation.
Yes, we have to remember, this is not DA Rourke. I forgot to put this disclaimer.
I don't know. I don't even work in that state. I'm not licensed in that state.
This is not DA Rourke.
Yeah, these are all, at best, guesses. Only he could answer why he did certain things, right? Can only speak for ourselves.
Okay, no, because at first, Chris said everybody died at the house, and that's a story that the DA said during sentencing. But in the prison interview, Chris said that the girls woke up and he killed them at the oil site. But
he has said many different. We have different versions of things. He has said many things.
But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. He pled guilty. So it's neither here nor there whether or not they died at the house or they died at the the oil site.
Like ultimately they died, right? That's what he was charged with murder. We know that they died, and we know that they died at his hands. Whether or not there was someone else involved that helped him is really not relevant to whether or not he himself is guilty of it. And we have nothing to discount his admission. That is a valid way of proving someone guilty when they themselves tell you that they're guilty.
I wouldn't. Okay, I mean, some say the investigation was botched as much as the Ramsey case. Now, the Ramsey case is completely different because that one, they still haven't found the perpetrator and the grand jury ordered to indict, but the DA refused to indict and lied to the public. In this case, you have somebody who confessed. I mean, when people, say the investigation was botched, I'm very careful to accuse law enforcement. I mean, yes, they're.
Will ever say that any investigation is 100% perfect. And it's very easy to go in after the fact and say, well, they should have done this or they should have done that. I mean, hindsight is 2020, right? So, and a lot of it boils down to how experienced is this jurisdiction with murder investigations? My guess is not very, not, that's a good thing for them to not know they don't have many murders. I mean, that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that, like, not all jurisdictions have the same experience with homicides because they're just not as frequent. So it's very easy to go in after the fact and dissect everything that they did and didn't do. And yeah, I'm sure that many mistakes were made, and I would chalk it up to inexperience. More so than to try to say that they did it for any kind of other, like, insidious purpose. I would say that the mistakes that were made in this investigation, and of course there were mistakes because there are mistakes made in every investigation. No investigation is going to be 100% perfect. There will always be somebody that can come in and criticize something that was or was not done. But I would chalk it up to inexperience and not to some kind of larger conspiracy to hide something else.
Okay, well, we're trying to go into chronological order. So we're trying to get to the confession, but we've been kind of sidetracked with the crime scene, and so I'm trying to read all the comments.
Yeah, I see a comment here that false confessions happen. Sure. Of course they do. But that's also why they don't release all of the details of a crime in order to know when someone is falsely confessing. That's why they don't disclose every detail. They try to keep things that only the murderer would know. That's how they know if it's a false confession or not. I don't see anything that would lead me to believe that this was a false confession.
Well, I mean, you mentioned that he falsely accused Shannan.
Right, that was just him deflecting and trying to, how can I come out best in this scenario? Like, oh, let me just blame it on her and make it seem like I was driven to do it because she did this horrendous thing.
Okay, well, let's because I want to keep this organized and go through this chronologically. Let's go through the consent to polygraph because it's important that we get all the facts straight.
Mm-hmm. And the polygraph would not have been admissible at a trial.
Yes, exactly.
It's just an investigation tool. It's nothing that could be used against you because it's not.
Okay, so I'll wait till it appears on the screen. Okay, so here is where Chris basically says, I hereby state, to the best of my knowledge, I am in good physical and mental health. I also state that no force, duress, or undue influence has been used against me, and I'm consenting to this polygraph interview at my own free will. So signed by Christopher Watts before he took the polygraph. So he did it willingly, and before he took the polygraph, he was also given his Miranda rights so that he knows that he can stop talking at any time. Do you want to go through these, Christina?
You mean what the Miranda rights are?
I mean, yeah. So he's basically given, he's told that he has a right to remain silent, that he doesn't need to talk, and this he's told at 11:08 a.m. And he's told in writing that he says anything he says will be used against him, and that he has the right to have to talk to a lawyer and have a lawyer present with him while he's being questioned. And that if he can't afford to hire a lawyer, one will be appointed during the questioning. And that if he decides any time to exercise these rights not to answer any question, that he can decide to exercise these rights at any time. Does he understand? Yes. Have these rights in mind? Does he wish to talk? Yes.
Yeah, so well, it's important to remember that, like, when do you need to Mirandize someone? Basically, that kicks in during what is called a custodial interrogation. So a person has to be under arrest and they have to be interrogated. So that's when you have to advise of Miranda rights. And you only need to, if you want to be able to use that confession against them at a trial, you need to properly Mirandize. So that's the purpose of going through these things, so that you can properly so that you can use that confession against them in a trial. So yeah, like that involves, anything that you say will be used against you. You have the right to an attorney. Do you understand and give up these rights and agree to talk to us? So I think that he was properly advised. I mean, they have it in writing. I'm assuming that they have it on video also, them read it, going through it with him. So there's no way that would have not come in at a trial. I see no in which he was properly Mirandized and he properly waived them. He understood and he gave up those rights and agreed to talk to them.
Yes, I mean, and it is very frustrating that somebody willingly waives their Fifth Amendment right, but people do it all the time.
We'll do it all the time, and or like they say things all the time without even meaning to. That's why I always tell people, I'm like, if you're questioned by the police and you did something, you should just not say anything at all, ever, because anything can and will be used against you. Anything.
Yes, exactly. I mean, he was fully warned, and
I mean, they could use. I mean, but there's also stuff that they could use against him before he was even under arrest. I mean, the stuff that he told the media, he went out and did that on his own. All of that could be used against him.
Yes. No, but he was Mirandized. I mean, and he was told during the polygraph.
Yeah, anything that came out in that custodial interrogation would have totally been admissible at court because he was properly Mirandized and he acknowledged that he understood and gave up those rights, and it's in writing. I mean, there's just no way. There's no way they would have been able to attack that.
Okay, so let's go through the confession and then you can say what you think about it. We'll just go through it briefly, or let me look at the time, because I'm conscious that, wow, it's already 8:40. So actually, I mean, most people already know the confession. So, and you know the confession. So, I mean, what were your thoughts about? Well, okay, I'll just show a little bit because I have it timed. So that you can comment on the read technique as well, whether or not you thought he was coerced.
No, I mean, when I think of coerced, I think of, like physical torture, things like that. I mean,
would answer the same thing, that your wife initiated the contact? Okay.
Sure. And then
I would say he treated very, very nicely with these interviewers.
to see if she could, what she could do. Okay. And that's in there too. You're fired. Go ahead.
Tell me about the pregnancy. Was that your idea or hers?
She said it was she was about 80-20. Well, I went to the pros and cons of it. Like after she got pregnant, she told everybody that it was mainly my idea.
Is that true?
Yeah, I mean, I wanted a boy.
Did you want to get pregnant?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then after the fact, she said it was mainly me that wanted it, and she was about, she was 70-30 against it at that point. Like she would tell her friends that.
Yeah.
And I was just like, what, 70-30 against it? Like, why?
Okay. Can you understand that some of this just doesn't make sense to us? Okay. How is it
And they
possible
were
that
throwing that out
you
there
can
that maybe
just
it was
completely
Shannan
contact
I promise you, I have
I think they were
nothing on my hands that I did
it's
nothing to those kids or her to make them vanish.
So tell me what happened then. I believe.
What did you say?
I was saying, I think that they threw out that thing about maybe it was Shannan. They were trying to get him to, slowly start opening that door of admitting a little bit by little. Because, at first, if you accuse him right off the bat of doing all of it, he's gonna just shut down and say, no, I didn't do it. So if you can get him to admit a little bit, then you can start chipping away at that. And, slowly get him to sink himself by admitting a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. And I think that's a valid interrogation technique.
That you did nothing on your hands. What happened?
When I left, I mean, it's on video that I left and I was in my truck. I didn't load anything into my truck besides my tools, my container, my book bag, my water jug, my lunchbox.
Okay. But then what?
He's got a whole inventory.
No.
Yeah, because he's providing a lot of unnecessary details. It makes it seem more like he's telling the truth.
They were still in the house.
Where are they? Where did they go?
I don't know, sir. I really don't know.
Your wife's not the type of person to vanish.
I know she's not.
She had 10 things on her schedule that meant she was going to be there the next day, that day, the day after that, with friends, with a doctor. Okay. She didn't leave because she wanted to.
Okay.
So what happened?
I didn't do anything to her or the kids.
Was it an accident?
I didn't do anything.
Was it an accident?
There was no accident. I don't know if there was an accident in the house. I wasn't there for it.
It's a big deal if it's an accident, because we can work with that, Chris.
No,
There's no maybe what happened.
I did not cause an accident. I didn't do anything to my wife and kids.
Was it a misunderstanding?
There's no misunderstanding. Like, we had that talk. There was a misunderstanding where I didn't tell her about the affair.
Okay.
I didn't. That was a misunderstanding. Like,
Miscommunication,
yeah,
misunderstanding.
Yeah.
Good.
But I probably should have told her right then, honestly. I mean, everything was out on the table anyways.
Right.
I should have told her right then. But I didn't, because I just couldn't bring myself to do it.
What was your plan? What were you going to do? I mean, how is the separation gonna work? Like, once we got separated and I get my own place, and then I mean, 50-50 split with the kids, I was hoping. Mm-hmm. What about Nikki? Take it slow and just see if, if anything develops, like, when I'm, at my own place. Okay.
I just find it hard to hear you talk about just having this emotional.
Talking about separation and everything, about making sure.
So we'll skip to where he talks to his dad.
I freaked out. Those are my kids. So sweet. I know. Tell us how long the thing or? And it's, polygraph. Failed it. Yeah, because there's too much emotions. So, I mean, they're not gonna let me go. Is the reason why they shouldn't? They know I had an affair. And they know. I can't complain about that. Mm-hmm. They know you had an affair. Mm-hmm. Anything else you want to tell me what's going on or what happened or anything, or you know anything about? When we had that conversation that morning, it was emotional. It was told her about separation and everything like that. Mm-hmm. What happened after that? I helped me downstairs. I want to protect her. What? I want to protect her. You don't want to protect her?
See, I always wondered if that was the mistress or the wife. I don't want to protect her.
I think he's talking about Shannan.
She heard him? Yeah.
I think he's still trying to sell this story of she killed the kids and I did it in a heat of passion. I killed her out of anger.
Well, he hasn't said it yet, but he's about to.
Yeah.
And
just, I saw, I do want to point out, I did see one comment. I mean, I think I've already said it numerous times, but let me say it again. I have no connection to this case. These are just my opinions. I'm not holding out anything as fact. And I haven't identified myself or what jurisdiction I work for, but anything that I say are my personal opinions only, and I do not hold them out as the opinion of any jurisdiction.
Okay, well done. Let's keep going.
I didn't hear anything.
He's really telling how
he came back up. They're gone. I don't know, let me talk I'm talking to her about that. I'm talking to her about separation and everything, about making sure lost. I don't know, like, what else to say, like, I freaked Those are my kids.
Like, it's so horrible what he's admitting to that he doesn't even want to say loudly.
First she, found that one time.
Yeah.
You were leaving this and go to work. And she freaked out over the separation of them. I don't think she laid back down, but that's when I went downstairs. But I heard like a little commotion upstairs, but I didn't think anything of it. And then we went back upstairs and she was, I could see like she was on top of the kitchen. Like choking her or did she kill him? They're blue. Both of them. Yeah. She took both of them with that. I freaked out in the champagne. How was it? I didn't like call cops about it. So when they being all the bodies off or something? I mean, I didn't know what else to do. I didn't freak out. I didn't know nothing else to do. I didn't know what to do. So she killed those 16 choked them to death. You lost it in the choke. You choke her or? That's just.
Okay, so in the interest of time, we're gonna keep this short because Christina does have limited time. So what is your thoughts so far? And the problem is that by Chris accusing Shannan of murdering the children, this has led to a lot of victim bashing.
No, I think it's total BS on his part. I think that was just his way of trying to throw her under the bus to justify what he did. It's like, no, it's because she, I had to because she drove me to it because she killed the girls. But then that was just a way for, they needed him to start admitting something. So they needed him to start with, fine, okay, I killed her, but it was only because she killed the girls. But then they were, that was a way for them to start slowly chipping away at his story to get him to finally admit all of it. But I think that was just a way of him trying to make himself seem as still kind of a good guy. Like, I only killed her out of anger because she murdered our children. He was trying to hide how horrible what he did truly was. Yeah, I think Tammy knew that he was kind of weak and kind of that she would have to offer up things like that for him to agree to, and was just waiting for him to take the bait so that he could hang himself. I think he's a very weak person, and he's very conflict avoidant, and his whole life he's been dominated by strong women. His mom, Shannan, Nicole, and he's kind of introverted, kind of passive. So they needed him to make passive admissions.
Well, here's a question people ask. So after he has confessed and located the bodies, and he was able to locate the bodies, he was arrested. And I'm going to show you the warrantless arrest because there's people who asked, well, if he only confessed to killing Shannan, how could he be arrested for all 3 murders? And I think this is something that is very important for you to explain.
I mean, you need probable cause to arrest. So they had
yes,
probable
well,
cause to arrest him.
I know.
And if they already had him there at the police station, why do they need a warrant? You don't need. You don't.
They still. Well, let's just go through the warrantless arrest affidavit. Let's just wait for it to come up on the screen. Can you see it?
Mm-hmm.
So here, okay, so say, he only confessed to killing one. So why is he all of a sudden confess, has a warrantless arrest for all three? I mean, in my opinion, nobody is believing that confession. And he was able to locate all three bodies. And, they said if Shannan did that, why didn't you call the doctor? Why didn't you call an ambulance? Why didn't you call 911 if she was supposedly suffocating or strangling the children?
Right, and she couldn't have done it simultaneously. She couldn't have suffocated them both at the same time. So presumably she would have had to do it one at a time, so he would have had time to stop her before she killed the next one. So they already knew that was a bunch of crap,
Yes, and also, in order to go to trial, they still have to show probable cause to go to trial at the preliminary hearing as well.
Yeah, the preliminary hearing is to determine if there is probable cause to believe that a crime was committed and this defendant committed it. So it's like another.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So can you explain this process in terms of criminal procedure? That, the arrest is the arrest, and then you have probable cause just to arrest, and that's to detain. But then also, in order to bring forth the charge to go to trial, you still have to prove, that there is probable cause forward in a preliminary hearing.
Yeah, a prelim is to see if there's probable cause to proceed to trial. So it's like another checkpoint, kind of. So not every state has preliminary hearings. So it depends on the state, but I mean that is the purpose of a preliminary hearing. So in some jurisdictions, something begins as a complaint at the arraignment process, and then you have the preliminary hearing, and the judge's role is to determine is there probable cause to hold the defendant to answer, for a felon, to proceed further in this prosecution, and then it becomes an information, and at a trial you proceed on the information. But different jurisdictions work differently. Like I've said before, I don't work in Colorado. I don't know their procedure, but that's generally the purpose of a preliminary hearing, is to have somebody else not involved with the investigation to hear what is the evidence and to see, is there probable cause to believe that a crime was committed here and that this defendant did it, enough to hold him to answer for it at a trial. So that's the purpose of a preliminary hearing.
Okay, so the next day he has a first court appearance, and we'll just go through the first court appearance real quick. There's only like a few crucial parts of the first court appearance. Oops, hold on.
Mr. Ward, correct me if I'm wrong. one thing. Formal charges have not been filed yet?
That's correct, Your Honor. The defendant was arrested. Formal charges have not been filed. On my calculation, I believe they will be due to the court at 3:30 on Monday.
Thank you. Mr. Mercer, anything you would like to say about that?
Not regarding that issue, thank you.
So the court has reviewed a affidavit in support of a warrantless arrest. The court has found probable cause for the arrest. Specifically, I see that Mr. Watts was arrested for 3 counts of first-degree murder, each a Class 1 felony, and 3 counts of tampering with a deceased human body, each a Class 3 felony. Again, these are only charges that are named in the affidavit in support of the warrantless arrest. It's the district attorney's office who will ultimately decide what charges, if any, are going to be filed. And Mr. Mercer, would you like me to advise your client of his rights pursuant to Rule 5?
Yes, please.
Thank you. So Watts, I would like you to listen carefully to the rights that you have, okay? And so first, you don't need to make any statements. Any statements you make can and may be used against you. Do you understand? Yes. You have the right to counsel. Do you understand? Yes, sir. If you are indigent, you have the right to request the appointment of counsel or consult with a public defender before any further proceedings are held. Do you understand that? Yes, sir. And Mr. Merson is the head of the public defender's office, and he is going to represent you today and potentially in the future. Do you understand that? Yes, sir. Okay. Any plea that you make must be made voluntarily and not the result of undue influence or coercion. Do you understand that? Yes, sir. Right now, charges have not been filed, so this is a limited advisement. I intend to bring you back next week once formal charges are filed on Monday, so I can give you a full advisement. But I will tell you that at this point, the court is not authorizing any bail. Once I know what the official charges are that are filed by the district attorney's office, I'll inform you the nature of the charges. If charges are filed, you have the right to a jury trial, and you have the right to demand and receive a preliminary hearing within a reasonable time to determine whether probable cause exists to believe that you committed any of the charges that are filed by the district attorney's office. Do you understand that? Yes, sir. I believe that your lawyer has filed about 16 or so motions on your behalf.
Okay, so now we're going to skip through. So can you go through the purpose of the first hearing? That he has to appear the day after he's arrested, because this is part of his right, that you can't just be detained without appearing in court.
Yeah, so basically this is like his arraignment kind of, but not really, in that he's not being asked to enter a plea at this point. So an arraignment is usually when you're told what the charges are against you and you're asked to enter a plea. So but I guess this is a yeah, I mean, like there always has to be a part at which like there's kind of like a magistration almost when someone is arrested. There needs to be like some kind of like a judge or a magistrate to see if there was probable cause for this arrest. So that's what the purpose of this was.
Yes, and as the judge stated that his preliminary hearing as part of the Sixth Amendment right to a speedy trial, etc., under their statute, is that it's 35 days from the date of when formal charges are filed.
And that's like.
And so I'm just going to show.
In some states, it's 10 days.
Yeah, go ahead. Yes. So I'm going to show just like. Yeah, go ahead.
Are you talking to me?
Yeah, you didn't finish, so I interrupted. Sorry.
I'm saying, and so not every state has a preliminary hearing. Not every state has a definite, like determinate amount of days that is considered to be a speedy trial. So I know in some jurisdictions, it is you have 10 days. 10 days for a preliminary hearing from the date of your arraignment. But you routinely waive and give up that right so that it can go past that period. But I'm saying, like, it's interesting that, like, in some states it's 10 days, here it's 35 days. you know?
Right. And does he have to be drug tested when he's arrested?
No, I mean, like, nothing is mandatory. They would only drug test him if they had reason to believe that he was under the influence of something. But that's not something that's routine.
Okay. So there's going to be the part that I just want to pay attention to is about the touch DNA and also the part about law enforcement releasing the crime scene and also the protective order because about him not talking to investigators and only his public defender.
Mhm.
Is putting the prosecution on notice that at some point they may be in possession of exculpatory evidence, and it's their duty to make reasonable efforts to preserve that and ultimately provide that to the defense. And so I think they're on notice by the mere fact that we're talking about this, that Mr. Wren got a copy of the motion, and if this becomes an issue later on, we can litigate this, and there's some pretty significant sanctions for the destruction of exculpatory evidence.
So here, the DNA swabs.
Okay, so that will be the ruling of the court.
Your Honor, may I ask one clarifying question? Because the way that the
I'll
motion
explain
is
later.
titled, talks about the collection of touch or trace DNA at 2825 Saratoga Trail, as well as during the autopsy, but the body of the motion does not. I want to make sure that Mr. Merson is aware that the home where the homicides were alleged to have occurred has been released by law enforcement, was released as of about midnight last night. So even as we stand today, we are not in a position to be able to go back in and collect trace DNA from that home. So I just want to make clear that the ruling of the court does not require us to do anything affirmative with respect to the home.
And Mr. Wren advised me that the government is no longer in control of the home, so I'm aware of that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With regard to the motion for protective order, essentially for nobody to speak to Mr. Watts other than his attorneys and investigators and support staff, I'm assuming there's no objection to that?
Correct.
You'll put law enforcement on notice on that issue?
Yes.
Okay. Any other time-sensitive issues that cannot wait until next Tuesday?
Nothing further to do.
Mr. Merson?
Can I just have 1 second?
Sure.
Okay, so those were the few key issues that I wanted to highlight. One is that there was a motion for to extract DNA swabs from the neck and various parts of the bodies of the girls when they're recovered. And there's some misinformation in the mainstream media because there's footages of news that was denied. But the judge actually granted it because he said that that's exculpatory evidence and that, the prosecution was saying that they don't have possession of the body yet, but the judge said that it's exculpatory evidence, so they have a duty to collect it. And indeed, it was collected. So that's just something that I want to, put out there for clarification purposes. And there is a part about, here you hear about the crime scene that both the defense and the DA are on notice that the crime scene had been released. Mm-hmm. And do you want to say anything about the parts of protective order of the defendant not speaking with anybody besides the defense attorney?
That's pretty standard. His defense team is not going to want him to talk to anybody because anything that he says can be used against him later. So, whereas opposed, anything that he says to his defense team is going to be protected by attorney-client privilege. So, that's just, he had competent attorneys that don't want him to talk to anybody because anything could be used against him. That's pretty standard. As an attorney, you would advise your client not to talk to anybody but you.
Yes, and that's a part that I think we're not realizing is that any phone calls that he has with his parents or anything is going to be recorded and can be used against him. So anything that he says, and I did discuss with a criminal defense lawyer, and he said, I would make my client do the same thing because he may slip, he may say something, his parents may ask what happened, and I mean,
Yeah.
there could be anything that happens. And so you want to be the utmost careful that you do not talk to anybody.
Yep.
So this is just standard practice in any criminal case, that while the defendant is in custody, you don't talk to anybody. And the protective order is to prevent investigators from trying to talk to Chris without the defense attorney present.
They can't. That's highly improper. He has an attorney, and he has, that right has kicked in. They cannot go around the attorney and try to question him without the attorney present. Oh no, that is like misconduct. Can't do that.
Yes, and also about the psychiatric valuation. Does he need to have a psychiatric valuation?
No, that's not standard. I mean, they only do that. They only order a psych eval if there's reason to believe that some kind of mental health issue is at play. And usually that's raised by the defense. It's something the defense would ask for. They would ask for their client to be evaluated, but they don't do that. It's not routine. Because
Right, so it's not standard.
Those things cost money.
Yes, it's not standard. It's not standard practice for a psych eval. And so I have put in a link in the live description if you want to watch the full first appearance hearing, the second appearance hearing. And the title of the video is a little bit misleading because it states that Chris waives his preliminary hearing. But that is not true. This is why even mainstream media has a lot of misleading information, because he actually doesn't waive it. What he waives is a 30-day statutory date for the preliminary hearing, because there's so much discovery that basically they're postponing the preliminary hearing to a later date.
Yeah, that's for the defense to waive and give up their right to have the trial or a preliminary hearing within a certain amount of time, because that's not enough time for them to prepare their own defense. So that's pretty
yes, that's all it is. Because I mean, people think that there's somehow like Chris was taken advantage of. No, that was actually for Chris's defense team.
That happens all the time.
Yes. Yes. So let's now talk about Chris entering the plea. The guilty plea. Now, he was in under suicide watch, where he was allowed to only leave 1 hour a day. I actually read through his prison log, and I mean, and I've talked to defense attorneys that when you're under suicide watch, you're actually not in total solitary confinement, in the sense that you do actually get a lot of interaction with correctional officers, and they're actually really trying to make sure you're okay. And the laws are in the discovery. You can read through it, which book he's reading. He takes about 3 days to finish one book, and then he'll request another book. But some think that, being in that kind of confinement for a certain period of time makes him not in a proper mental state to plead guilty.
No, I don't see that. I mean,
what do you think about that?
What did? I mean, that just doesn't make any sense to me. What would have been considered like the proper ways of confining him so that they would think that he was in the proper mental state? I mean, basically, it all comes from like, what is your viewpoint? Do you think that he was coerced, or do you think that he was not coerced? I mean, you can always find things to prove your point, so to speak. So I don't think that anything was done improperly, or that he was cruelly or unusually punished or confined or detained in any way. I don't think there was any kind of coercion. So yeah.
Yes, and I did put a link through to the prison interview, and Chris said he pled for a reason. We will never fully know what his reason is. And
it was because he is a coward. He didn't want to have to face what he did and have to face everyone. So this was just the easy way out of just being like, fine, yes, I did it. Okay, let's be done with it. Let's move on.
Yes, and I read through. I listened to his prison interview, and I put in the transcript there, and you can click on the link. I have tried to cite as many references as possible if you're interested in reading more into it. But the transcript does not fully match the audio. But I put in the transcript just because the audio is a little bit difficult to listen to. But he talked about not being able to even sit through a preliminary hearing because he cannot look at the autopsy photos, and he's not able to sit through and to look at the aftermath of what he did. And he my interpretation is that he almost kind of tried to make himself like a martyr, that he doesn't want to put the families through trial and flying in and out of Colorado for 2 to 4 years up until 2022. He wanted it to be over. He wanted it to be over since September, and they didn't allow him for it to be over. And he just wanted to stop it as soon as possible and just end the process. And he talked about how happy he was with his attorneys. He called them all by names. It's quite interesting if you listen how happy he was to see his interrogators. Like he thought they were his friends. At least that was an interesting observation. And I think that's my take on his plea, is that, and some may interpret it as he's covering for other people, and that may very well be possible.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that could very well be possible.
That's possible.
But
I think that the most likely explanation is that, yeah, he's just a coward and he didn't want to have to go through it anymore. This was a way of being done with it already. He was trying to save himself. I think he was trying to keep as much, because at a trial, everything was going to come out. And it was going to be like fully on display, every mistake he ever made, including his affair. So I think it was more self-preservation. I don't think it was this altruistic reason of he was trying to save other people pain. He was trying to save face, and he didn't want to have to face it or go through with it. So it was just easier to admit to everything and be done with it.
Yes, and he said that he wasn't afraid of, that it wasn't about taking the death penalty out of the table or anything. He actually didn't care about that.
I think he's just a very conflict avoidant person, and a trial is a very long, drawn out conflict. And he's very conflict averse. So he doesn't want to have to go through those things.
You're very right. He is a conflict avoidant person. And in fact, he's been avoiding conflict his entire life. He will say whenever there's a conflict, he'll say he'll deal with it, but he doesn't deal with it. And that is his total personality. I'm not a psychologist, but that is my observation from the footages that I have watched him over and over again. And he will lie to get out of a conflict. He will lie and lie and lie. And, to please people, as a people pleaser. And the time that he showed the most emotion during the interrogation was not when they were asking him about the children. They were when they were asking him about the children, Bella, Celeste, Shannan. He never uttered their name. He would say these kids, those kids, as if they were he had completely dissociated from them. It was never my kids, our daughters, my daughters, our children. It was like these kids, those kids, as if they were not his. And that was the one thing that I found to be quite a red flag for me, in terms of how much he has distance and how little emotions that he had. And this, and this is subject to wide interpretations by people. But another thing that I observed is that the 2 times that I noticed him having a lot of emotions during his confession is when he confessed to having an affair, and he said when he was caught during the lie detector test, and he said, "Okay, I had an affair," and they were like, "Yeah, we know," and then he said, "Oh, she took my breath away. She's the most wonderful person. I've never felt this way about anybody in my life." And all of a sudden he perked up and, he was all energetic and dramatic and rambling about his feelings for NK when they were interrogating him, and he just failed the polygraph test. And I just thought, this person has no sense of awareness. And then he was like, "Please leave her out of this. I don't want to name her. I don't want to leave her out of the investigation. She's already been through enough. I mean, she was with me even though I was married. I mean, poor her." And I just thought, and then the other time he showed emotions was when his coworkers were going to find out where the girls were, when they were going to have to retrieve the bodies of the girls in the oil tank. And when he was going to be exposed for the monstrous and atrocious act. And this was something that he couldn't sit through.
I think he has he tries to preserve the opinion that other people have of him. Or he's always very aware of what people are thinking of him. And he will do anything to he'll always try to make himself, he tries to shed the best light on himself, or try to well, yeah, I did this, but it's because of this other thing, or tries to make himself look better than is the truth.
Yes, absolutely. So now that he's been in prison for 2 years, and I don't think we have enough time today to go through the mistress interviews, but I think you and I had enough discussions behind the scene about her phone pinging and her total lack of credibility as a witness when she was giving the statement, her multiple lies and contradiction. And we don't need to watch the interviews. And I'm sure everybody in this chat is fully familiar with that I will spare you from listening to NK's atrocious voice. So, we talked about the potential alleged role that she could have played, and how, and this is hypothetical because I want to put a disclaimer out there that everybody is entitled to the presumption of innocence until they're proven guilty in the court of law. So we're not making any accusations. We are only discussing hypothesis and certain facts and evidence that have come to light, and whether or not there could be a potential investigations and how that could play out. And from what I have looked at, so she did eventually sign a waiver for all data of her phone. And although she had deleted all her text messages, and prior to deleting all her text messages, she had Googled, can cops trace text messages, difference between text detail and text message, how long do phone companies keep text messages? And then she broke her SIM card. She probably threw it under the water and then drove a tractor over it, allegedly. We don't know, but she had manipulated her phone, probably put it through a cleaning app, and then they could barely get any of her texts back. And Eventually, they subpoenaed Verizon, and she even lied to law enforcement in body in the recording that she doesn't have the cloud, even though on her phone bill it says she pays $2.99 for the Verizon cloud. I mean, just it is so frustrating, and I give, well, I give credit for her interrogator for the patience that he had. But what are your thoughts now in terms of, is there, okay, first I want to say it's my opinion that she was treated as a victim in order not for her not to lawyer up. And just because that she was treated as a victim doesn't mean that they were not looking into her, because the fact that they subpoenaed her phone records mean that they were looking into her. But now, what is your opinion in terms of what could be done? Her phone did ping there at 6:16 in the morning, and there are other various circumstantial evidence that could potentially, hypothetically, allegedly lead one to suspect or want to further investigate her role.
I'm sure that they have, and that's why that was the purpose of them going back and interviewing him in prison about, all the movement in the basement or whatever. I'm sure that they have strong suspicions that he did not do this alone and that there was someone else involved, probably Nicole Kessinger, but they have to be able to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. That's the ultimate thing that's going to make or break a case. So I'm guessing that if they were going to try to make a case against her, they would try to put together as much as they could and then put it in front of a grand jury and then leave it up to the grand jury if they were going to indict or not. And unless they indict, we would not know if they did try to go before a grand jury, because all of those grand jury proceedings are secret.
Christine, I just want to say you're so popular. You've been asked if you could come back and discuss her interview.
I don't know when I would have time. Yeah. My hands full with those things. So,
another day, maybe, if you can come back and discuss her. I think you're very popular, Christina. This is why the chat is blowing.
I think that she's a very suspicious person, and she makes numerous false statements that, makes you wonder, why are you lying about this? She's not a very credible person. So
no, she practically lied about everything, and she Googled him a year before the murder, and nobody can figure out why she Googled him.
Yeah,
she Googled him in August 2017, and this is the puzzle. And I think this is why people feel like there's just some kind of mystery to this case. Yes, it is a closed case with respect to Chris.
Yeah. And whether they're going to want to put forth all the resources toward continuing to investigate her when, this is a closed case. They had a murder. They know who did it. If there was more than one person involved, it's possible. But they have to think about, is it worth going after her? How much could we really prove as to her involvement? I would say that the most they could prove is accessory after the fact, unless he flips on her and says she totally was there and did all of this, but then, a jury would have to believe his version of it. And is there anything else aside from him tying her there to the scene? There's her phone pinged or whatever, but is that enough? Is that enough to prove that she had an active hand in murdering these people? I would say no, that's not enough. That would
Christina,
not
I just
at a trial.
Want to say a lot of people are thanking you in the chat. You did get a lot of tough questions at first, but I think that may be the frustration coming from DA Rourke. So you're getting a lot of thanks in the chat and appreciation. So I just want you to know that. that nobody's ever heard from a prosecutor.
Well, I'm glad I was able to impart my knowledge, from my experience, but yeah, I mean, ultimately,
No, I mean,
case.
and that's what we need in this case. And this is what I'm hoping to do with this series, is to actually get, people with the knowledge and expertise to comment. Because even, I've been an attorney for 17 years, but I'm not a criminal defense attorney, or I'm not a prosecutor. So I have a certain kind of insight, but I'm not an expert in the field. So, and let's just discuss the 35C very quickly, because this is one burning question.
Mm-hmm. So from what I could see is he would have to produce something.
And I'll open up the form as well, so others can see it with you. And I put up a link to the form for everybody in chat, or who views it later. I put up the link to the PDF of the form, and as well as the Colorado Criminal Post-Conviction Handbook, so that you can actually go in there and read it for yourself as to what constitutes ineffective assistance of counsel, etc. And I will always try to cite things and give you the references that you need, because we want to be as fact-based as possible. So here's the 35C form. He can actually fill it out himself. Can you see the form, Christina?
Yeah.
I'll just scroll through it straight to the actual grounds that he can actually even potentially file. So here he has to state the facts and legal authorities on a separate page. So here are the grounds for the petition. So it has to be within the time prescribed.
For someone to do this when they're the ones that pled. He wasn't convicted at a trial.
Yeah, that's quite difficult. Yes. So, I mean, there is
now taking it back. It's like buyer's remorse. It's like, well,
it is buyer's remorse. And that's the thing that, during the sentencing, the judge makes very clear. And you will see in the guilty plea, which is also linked there, that there's a lot of language about him doing this knowingly and willingly and voluntarily. Yeah. So you can also read his waiver and guilty plea in the live description. But here, there seems to be, ineffective assistance of counsel. I've looked at the handbook, and I think it's going to be very difficult. And prosecutorial misconduct. I've looked at the explanations of what constitutes prosecutorial misconduct.
It would be withholding Brady information, which they didn't do here. Brady information is anything that is, exculpatory evidence, and that is a major no-no. I mean,
and we do have exculpatory evidence in this case. We have evidence that has latent prints that do not match him, and these would be the exculpatory evidence in this case, like in the garbage bag and the nitrate glove and the rake. So, I mean, this is something that would be litigated at trial.
Mm-hmm.
So the new evidence and material fact, I think, is what people are very much interested in, and, any potential involvement of others.
I mean, I think it would have to be that somebody else did it and not him. That's the only thing I could think of that would be enough.
Okay. Somebody just asked you, Christina, would you take a polygraph if asked? No. I can't tell you no.
Depends if I had something to hide or not.
I wouldn't. Who takes a polygraph anyways? It's not reliable.
If I had something to hide, then no. Would not take it.
You know what? You can fail if you're nervous.
Yeah. But I mean, that's why they're not admissible in court. That's why it's not admissible in court.
I would not take a polygraph test. No way, no way. And I would not speak without an attorney.
Yeah. But see, that can be used against you if you decline to take the polygraph. Whereas you cannot, the fact that you asked to not speak without an attorney present, that cannot be used against you. They cannot comment on that. That's inadmissible. That's error.
Thank you, Speaker Girl Music. Okay, so the evidence and material fact. Can you just, kind of elaborate a little bit, because it couldn't have been discovered at the time, and he didn't have a trial. So, what would that really look like? And does he have a chance? Because, in my opinion, he doesn't really have a chance. But
I don't think it would have to be showing that somebody else did it and not him. That's the only thing that would be. Because just showing that somebody else may have been involved, that wouldn't take away from the fact that he did it too. That wouldn't make him innocent. It would have to be showing something that would prove that he's innocent, and that would be somebody else did it and not me.
Yeah, and
someone else there's make you innocent. It just meant that somebody else was also there, guilty as well. But.
Yes, and irrespective of like minor little potential,
and he would have to. I think he would have, in order to attack his plea, he would have to show that it was, not given voluntarily, and that's why they make sure that they are asking all those questions on the record, so that people cannot just keep attacking these things that are, we have to be done with a case at a certain point. It has to be laid to rest. You can't always have it being reopened again, because that's not fair to anyone involved. I'm sure Shannan's family wants this to be done already. And it must be very frustrating to them and scary to think that at any point in time they could go back and undo everything.
Well, what do you think about there potentially being some kind of cover-up with the DA? Because
I don't generally believe in conspiracy theories, just because I think that humans in general are very, they're not very good at keeping secrets. And the more elaborate a conspiracy, the more people are involved, and the more likely it is that somebody would spill the beans at some point. I just think that that's like, people want to believe that it can't be as simple as this man was just greedy and became obsessed with his new mistress and was just trying to create a new life for himself in the most horrible way possible. And they, I think we're just like, well, no, that it can't be as simple as that. There has to be some other more complicated explanation as to what happened here. But I don't think it was. I think it's just, he's a coward. He's very greedy, very selfish. And this was the easiest way for him to get what he wanted, which was to have a new life with somebody that he was infatuated with.
But why did he take the bodies to Survey, though? That's one thing. I always think, why are you taking the bodies over there unless you're going to blow it up and stage an explosion? Because it seems like the dumbest move ever. Come on.
He's a very bad criminal, and he's a very bad liar, and
well, okay.
He just couldn't think of anything else to do. He was like, well, I don't know. Where else could I go and dump these bodies?
Yeah, but it's pretty premeditated, though. There's all these elaborate orchestrated meetings for him to be there by himself and occupy the scene by himself. So, it's one or the other, right? It's either he's really dumb as a rock and he took the bodies over there thinking that nobody was going to find them, or there's this plan to explode Survey and file for a wrongful death suit because this guy's in bankruptcy and the mistress is running the game.
Yeah, I just don't see how that would work.
Somewhere in between.
Yeah, but I mean, like, he would have had to orchestrate the explosion being the thing that killed them, because they can tell when somebody died. So I don't know. I think that's just making them that requires a level of sophistication on his part and other people's parts that I just don't see it. That's like,
Mhm.
yeah, I don't see enough to lead me down that path.
I think there's kind of different schools of thought. There's the school of thought that he's this evil monster who did it alone, or he couldn't have done it alone. He had help.
Yeah, I'm saying he probably did have help, but then the question remains is, but can you prove that he had help beyond a reasonable doubt? And if you can't, then there is no point in going any further.
Yeah, I mean, I
Really think
agree on the last point. I mean, in one way, I think he's too much of a coward to kind of, not be egged on somehow. But I don't know. I mean, this is why I think so many people are stuck in this case. That
Yeah.
is, how does a completely normal guy, and and maybe I am really struggling.
It's so scary. It's so scary because from all signs, they looked completely normal and completely happy, and it's so scary to think that something like that could happen to such a, like, quote unquote perfect family. So that's why people are,
Yes.
well, no, it had to be because there was all of this other stuff involved. I think it's easier for us to accept it. It's a way of us saying, oh, this couldn't happen to me because I'm not involved in any conspiracies or cover-ups, or this is something that happens to other people but not to me. But because that's scary. It's scary to think that the person that you love, your spouse, could completely wipe you and your whole family out because he's selfish. And that's something people don't want to think about or admit because it's so scary.
Well, yes, and I think that's why there's so many different theories as to how this could have happened, and because it's just so unimaginable.
Yeah.
And the crime is just so heinous and atrocious. And to think, I mean,
that people are capable of that, especially, I mean, it was bad enough to murder his wife, but then to have murdered his kids. Oh.
Well, and I think it's the body disposal. That is, I think that just took it to another level. You have a lot of family annihilators that don't get this much attention.
Yeah, I mean, it was just so, like, how can, I can see you murdering your wife, but to murder your children, that takes a whole other level of monster.
And even if you think he didn't murder his children, he still allowed it. So he's just as guilty under the law.
Oh, no, I definitely think that he murdered his children. I definitely think that he did. That's just my personal opinion.
I have really kind of gone back and forth on
I definitely don't think Shannan did it.
Oh, definitely not. And if you think that, then this is not the right channel.
So I would say, like, and if he allowed somebody else to do that to his children, that's equally culpable.
Well, exactly. That's the thing, because under the felony murder rule, I mean, you're just as guilty of the felony, no matter what. So it doesn't, so Chris is guilty.
Yeah.
Guilty of all crimes. Mm-hmm. And that is it. Mm-hmm. This is not a Chris apologist, but we're trying to understand things a little bit better. And factually in a non-biased way, and hopefully with input of people like Christina, who is going to help, unravel this case with the legal system. And before the last document I think we should really go through is the guilty plea, the plea agreement. Well, which, I mean, it does not say plea agreement. It just says guilty plea.
Well, yeah, I mean, in order to accept a guilty plea, you're waiving and giving up certain rights. So you have to make sure that the defendant knows that he has these rights and that he is acknowledging that he has those rights and actively giving them up.
I need to take a quick break. Can you go ahead and explain a guilty plea and written waiver, and I'll be right back. And if there's any questions, I'll be right back.
So basically it's just going through, like what all his basic rights are. So obviously he has the right to remain silent. He has the right to a trial, to a jury trial. He has the right to an attorney. So all of these things are necessary to be a valid and voluntary plea. So these are things that they have to go through when taking any kind of a plea in a case, so that it cannot be attacked later. So it's good that they have it all written out. It's usually done on the record as well. And in different jurisdictions, different people are the ones taking the plea. I've seen defense attorneys take the plea of their own client. I've seen prosecutors take the plea. I've seen judges take a plea. But there's a bunch of questions that need to be asked so that someone cannot come in at a later date and attack the validity of a plea. That's why all of this is established before, so that no one can say that it was coerced or that he did something because he didn't know any better, or all of that stuff.
Hi, I'm back. Yes, it's like a colloquy, right?
Yeah, I mean, just there's
And
certain
so you have
things
to, right?
that you have to establish that he is aware of these rights and that he's giving them up.
Yes, and that this explains that he has the right to a jury trial, which what it includes, and that he's read, understood all the elements of the charges, and he knows the penalties. And what about clause 9?
My plea is freely, intelligently, and voluntarily given. I know that I'm giving up all the rights described above. I understand these rights. I'm giving up these rights and pleading guilty of my own free will. No one has pressured me or tried to make me plead guilty against my will. I have not decided to plead guilty because of anything I've been told, except for the agreements shown. Yeah, I mean, they try to make it as bulletproof as possible so that someone cannot come in after the fact and attack it on any of these grounds. So they're trying to establish.
I mean, to me, this is a pretty
it's pretty detailed,
solid,
thorough
guilty plea. I mean,
and I'm sure they go over it on the record and they read these things out.
They do. I mean, the judge goes and asks him numerous questions.
Yeah, you want your record to be solid, that he was advised of these things in open court, and it's on the record. And he waived
and that they go through everything. So if you want to read further into the plea, you have it linked. So you are free. I will try to keep citing all the documents for your interest. And
yeah, I don't see. I mean, there's no believe that plea was not valid or voluntary. I don't see any way of how you could attack that plea.
Well, Rianne, thank you for coming back after you've taken a few weeks off this case. Hopefully, you'll stay along this journey of just trying to be fact-based. And there was one question. Yes, detector, where was your last question? Okay, so when he pled guilty during his sentencing, this is what a lot of people are saying. Why didn't he give an account of exactly what happened and how? Okay, I've heard all kinds of things that, such as this plea was faster than settling a speeding ticket. And there's never been a case where somebody pled guilty without detailing and accounting exactly what they have done and corroborating their guilty plea with the evidence. Or like, all kinds of things about, normally you just plead guilty. You just say you're guilty. You don't need to explain anything.
Exactly.
So can you just please put it on the record?
I guess every jurisdiction is different, but in the jurisdictions that I've worked at, it suffices to just say you're pleading guilty or no contest. And that's enough. You don't have to explain any further than that. Why do you need to elaborate? Why? For what? What's the purpose? But every jurisdiction is different. I don't know if here they take factual pleas or, without working in Colorado, I can't speak to how they do things there. But I know in other jurisdictions, it's not necessary.
This went on for 2 months. I don't know what, I don't know. He had time to think about it and reflect. And he wanted it to be over since September. And whether you believe it or not, and whether you believe his reasoning, he wanted it to be over, in my opinion, and according to his own words. And yes, he's a pathological liar. So why he wants it to be over is subject to your own interpretation. But I do not believe that he entered into this plea knowingly, willingly, voluntarily, just as he consented to the polygraph knowingly, willingly. He thought he was going to get away with it. But when he told in his prison interview, he said he went there, he knew he wasn't going to walk out. So he went there knowingly, voluntarily.
Yeah.
And
I agree.
I don't know what is, what is there to cover up, except if he's covering up for somebody. But there's nobody covering up for him.
No.
What about, the mistress getting hush money because she's been in hiding and she's managed to scrap her record clean and change her name, that she could have gotten like millions of payout from the oil company?
Who knows? Anything is possible.
Yes, I'll need to get in one of my friends who's an in-house counsel at one of these mega oil companies about their compliance issues and how these things do not happen as so easily. But that will be another subject. You're only being the prosecutor today. You cannot cover every subject.
No, I cannot.
But
I do have to head out.
Yes. Is there any last burning question for Christina? Because otherwise, I'm going to thank Christina and really appreciate your time. And I think that you have been able to be very educational and give an insight from a very seasoned prosecutor's point of view. And I really appreciate it. And I know that many people appreciate it. And hopefully, yes, Mel Max said, thank you so much for your time.
Welcome.
I know many people have thanked you throughout the chat, but as you can see, like so many people have so many questions. It's like I told you, Christina, when I reached out to you that, there's so many questions out there. So Yes, a lot of people are thanking you, and really appreciate it because I know this is not your job and it's not part of your. You're doing this pro bono service to help out and do a great service to a lot of people who are, feeling very attached to this case.
Yeah.
And so hopefully, maybe after you've taken a break, you'll want to hop back on and discuss the mistress.
We'll see. We'll circle back to that.
Yes, but thank you so much. Everybody everybody says thank you. Great job. And I really appreciate you. So yeah, feel free to log out, and I'm going to say goodbye to everybody. And yes, Angelina said educating the public on this case is very important. So yeah, really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me. It's very interesting.
Yeah. You're gonna have to, get more into true crime as a hobby.
Okay, I will. All right, I am heading out.
Okay.
Thanks,
Okay,
everybody.
bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so everybody in chat, thank you so much. I hope this was at least educational or eye-opening and engaging. I've given you my thoughts, at least in the beginning, of why I felt, touched by this case, and I hope some of it resonates with you. And I really appreciate you so much for spending the time here. And I hope that gave you food for thought and that this can be an engaging journey for all of us as I am reframing my thoughts, because just as some of you may or you may not, you may have completely grasped it. And I have a hard time personally, to be fully honest with you, that this atrocity can happen to such a beautiful family. But I hope that we will never get all the answers, but I hope that we will get some answers. And with the help of some of our friends and experts and professionals, I will be featuring a coroner in 2 weeks, and you will get the time of death. That I promise you. And hopefully that will make things a lot clearer, and also exactly how a lot of the missing information from the autopsy and how they can be interpreted. So I hope you subscribe and stay tuned and share and like and comment. And please be respectful to our guests. I do welcome feedback on how to improve, but I just ask you to be respectful, and especially of our guest who has volunteered her time. And just be kind to each other. That's the only thing I ask. Yes, and have a good rest of the day, everybody, or evening. And thank you for tuning in, and hope you continue with the Watts series. Bye.